afternoon or good evening, everybody, depending who you are. My name is Senida Messi, former Deputy Prime Minister of Albania and a developing economist, and I'm happy to be here with some excellent panelists discussing about an important, very important topic. We are going to talk in this panel about cities, financial institutions, and sustainable urban finance. We are discussing in this forum how to finance the sustainability, how to finance the urbanization, but mostly it's important to know that what kind of infrastructure is in place for the municipalities, what kind of instruments, what kind of financial institution can work together with municipalities in order to finance the sustainable urbanization of these municipalities. Before losing any time, I would like to go to present shortly all of my panelists today, and thank you guys for being here today. I'm really happy that you find the time and sharing your experience and expertise in this such important topic. Together in this panel, there is Serge Alou, Technical Advisor, United Cities and Local Government World Secretariat by Expertise Funds on behalf of French Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Within this secretariat, his primary responsibilities include the World Observatory on Subnational Government Finance and Investment and International Municipal Investment Fund. He is a long expert in urban field, urban specialist, a researcher, manager, associate professor at the French Institute of Urbanism. Welcome, Serge.
Thank you. Thank you.
Together with us is Joshua Gallo, an independent advisor on municipal finance and associate fellow at Johns Hopkins University School of Advanced and International Studies. He collaborates with a long time with United Nations Industrial Development Organization, United Nations Capital Development Fund. Prior to that, he used to work for a long time with the World Bank as a senior municipal finance, and working together with the World Bank, he was leading the multi-donor City Credit Worthless initiative. And while at the World Bank, he was also program leader for the subnational technical assistance programs under private public infrastructure advisor facilities. Welcome, Joshua.
Thank you, Senida. Hi, everyone.
Together with us, there are two excellent, it's an excellent team, working as a professor, Dr. Satish Kumar, the professor at the School of Natural and Built Environment, Queen's University, UK. Hi, Professor. He is a leading international expert on colonial and post-colonial studies focused on South Asia, covering many areas across social sciences and humanities. He is heavily engaged in key issues of international development and its ramification across urban and rural contexts. In particular, challenges of heritage management in the context of rapid urbanization are a current area of his research. He is working together with a lot of governments, charities, and organizations, especially with the Northern Irish Assembly, International Department for International Development, Indian government, Royal Irish Academy, Belfast City Council, and Habitat for Humanity, among others. Together with him is Mark Irving, a managing partner of Cordovan Capital Management in UK. He has more than 20 years of experience in corporate finance and investment. He used to work with two of the big four companies, PricewaterhouseCoopers in London, and then later on with KPMG, till the moment that he found Cordovan Capital Management in 2011, initially focusing on raising equity for early stage and high growth companies, as well as advising shareholders on business acquisition and disposals. He began an active investment strategy with the formation of Cordovan Syndicate early in 2016, for which Cordovan Capital Management acts as lead investigator and manager. Actually, naturally evolved into the Cordovan Capital Partners LP, which was launched in January 2021. And Mike will be focused exactly in the ways and instruments of how the municipality can engage into different ways of financing. Welcome, both of you. I see that you are together in one office. Together with us is Dr. Mohamed Gambo. He leads the Policy Research and Partnership Unit at Shelter Africa, a Pan-African housing finance institution based in Nairobi, Kenya. The position is responsible for managing the policy, research, partner relationships, aspects of the organization towards providing innovative solutions to the housing and urban development challenges in Africa. In his role, he is directing and accomplished key resource mobilization, partnership, stakeholders engagement with various governments, private sectors, relevant key multilateral development finance, and non-sovereign institutions towards supporting the affordable housing and built environment practices in Africa. Welcome, Dr. Mohamed.
Thank you.
Last but not least, we have Emmanuel Muyu Mahoro. He is a senior regional and urban economist at Scott Consulting Ltd. in Great Lakes region of Africa, basically working in Rwanda, Burundi, Democratic Republic of Congo. Emmanuel is a regional expert in sustainable urbanization and industry cluster development with experience of more than 10 years, currently working with Scott Consulting as a senior economist in charge of analyzing the economic impact of informal settlements transformation and financing mechanism, especially to the rehousing project in the city of Gali. Welcome, everybody. As we presented in the same line, I would like to offer the screen or the floor to everybody of you, making maybe some direct question and then try to limit, let's say, our each of one presentation about around 7 minutes per each. Mr. Allow, having a long expertise in worldwide in urban and local development, planning and financing, I would like to ask you how much is important for the cities building a partnership and developing the right projects. And can you please share your experience from your previous job, from the actual job, especially in connection with the World Observatory on subnational government finance or the investment or the International Municipality Investment Fund?
Thank you very much, Anita, for this introduction. So I'm speaking now from the Barcelona, where I'm based at the United Cities and Local Government, which is a big associations of cities and associations of cities across the world. And I'm particularly in charge of all the issues related to local finances and to the implementation of a strategy of UCLG related to local finances. I would like to make three initial observations and would like to raise three issues related to this topic. Three initial observations. The first one is that we're talking of partnerships and of relationships between different levels of government. I think first thing is that cities, and not only cities, but local authorities, I mean, the local authorities in cities must be considered as public actors in their own right, which is not always the case. There's always, sometimes, some kind of competition between cities, well, subnational governments and national governments. And if we want to achieve the SDGs, we need to work together. I mean, we need to build these kind of partnerships between all levels of government with the same objective of achieving these SDGs. So first observation is that the partnerships are key, and partnerships with local authorities are key to achieve the SDGs. First observation. Second observation is that we think at UCLG that there should be, in terms of access of local governments to finance, there should be a focus and a big focus placed on intermediary cities which will concentrate most of the urban growth in the coming years, and particularly in the global south, in Asia, Southeast Asia, in Africa. I mean, the majority of the urban growth will occur in intermediary cities. This is my second observation. The third observation is that, and I think Joshua will talk a bit more about this, but there are a wealth of mechanisms that have been put in place to try and facilitate local government access to external finance. Plenty of mechanisms. And on the other hand, there's, well, it's said that there's plenty of money, plenty of resources that are not channeled to local government. So there is a mismatch between the resources that are supposedly available and the access of local government to these resources, and this despite the existence of so many mechanisms which are trying to build this kind of relationship between the two. So these were my third observation. So what are the issues for us at UCH? What are the issues? I mean, in order to try and increase and to try and facilitate a better access of local governments to adequate resources. The first thing I think is trying to rebuild, I would say, the fiscal space, the local fiscal space. I mean, in many countries of the world, cities don't have the autonomy, the leeway to be able to set taxes, to set rates, and so it's impossible for them to try and gather the resources needed. I mean, to be able to at least leverage additional finance for infrastructure investment, for capital investment in particular. So, first thing is the local fiscal space. I mean, fiscal autonomy of local government is key. The second thing is that we all know, and the observatory shows this, the observatory that we're working on shows that in the world, generally speaking, I mean, half of the resources on average, half of the resources of local governments come from intergovernmental fiscal transfers. These intergovernmental fiscal transfers are not always predictable, are not always stable. There is a lack of capacity of local governments to be able to anticipate what they are going to receive from national governments. And so the problem is that, well, in the legislation, everything is, well, somewhat clear, no? But in the reality, I mean, there are huge gaps between what the law says and what is actually happening on the ground. And in particular, this stability, the predictability, the fact that these transfers are actually formula-based and not, I mean, completely, you know, I don't know what the word is, but unpredictable for cities. So the second point is having these intergovernmental fiscal transfer more predictable, more stable, in order for local government to know what can be their resources in order to be able to finance investment. And the third thing is, of course, the access to external financing. Access to external financing is prohibited. Well, external financing, I mean, capital markets. In many countries, it's not possible for cities to access directly capital markets. I mean, the legislation prohibits this. Or in most cases, there must be some kind of endorsement by the national government, Ministry of Finance, for cities to be able to contract a loan or to issue bonds. And we all know, for instance, the experience of Dakar, who was able to repair the issuance of a bond. And this was at the end, I mean, stopped by the national government saying, no, you won't issue bonds. That's full stop. I mean, there's no possible discussion. So, you know, this kind of lack of autonomy of local government to be able to access capital markets is also a huge issue. So what we are trying to promote at our level, I mean, we think that this, and I was not speaking of the capacity, the creditworthiness of cities, which is also a very important issue, I mean, for cities to be able to access these capital markets. But what we think and what we're working on, and this should be the strategy of UCLG in the coming years, is try to set up at the national level.
Serge, we are in the limits of your time, so
Yeah,
can you please
I'm
make
finishing.
a conclusion, and then maybe we'll have time again later on to have a second round. Thank you.
Two final points, if I may.
Yes,
okay.
Please.
One is building at national levels platforms, bringing together all the actors in order to provide technical assistance to municipalities and to help them access these markets. And finally, just one final point, I think it's very important also to have mechanisms at national level to collect information on what is the reality of local finances. And this is what we do in the World Observatory, you know, trying to put together some standardized information, because without information, you can't inform the public debate around these issues. I'm stopping here. I'm sorry for being a bit.
Thank you.
Using a bit more time. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Working with municipalities, and exactly my question is, what cities can do to prepare themselves to have bankable projects? That's first. And the second, are they creditworthiness? And then how can they convince other institutions? And which are these institutions? So I mean, what kind of instruments are you talking about? What kind of institutions they need to work together in order to finance the best, or to make the best project, and then to get the financing of this best project for their development? Mr. Gallo, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Senida. I think this question deserves a little bit more than 5-7 minutes, but obviously I'll try to stick with the agreed upon schedule. Well, the first thing is to agree and follow everything Sergio just said, because I fully endorse what was raised. Now, obviously, Senida, as you know perfectly well, this is one of the biggest challenges, fundamental challenges for cities, particularly in developing countries, but not only, as we well know. So what can cities do, you know, with limited resources, limited capacities, to prepare what are complicated projects? Because let there be no doubt about it, right? Accessing private financing is a lot more complicated than turning to the central government for support, right? And yet it's absolutely necessary. So there's one space that I think cities control and have a lot more power on, and have the capacity to exploit at its fullest. And I think with the minimal effort, there can be a very high payoff, talking about bankable projects, by the way. So what is it? Well, I'm referring to the early concept stage of projects. So it's basically the project inception phase. And because it's the beginning of the project preparation process, we tend to underestimate the importance of that stage. We tend to, you know, lower the bar. Often these projects are kept, you know, in a drawer and then timidly, you know, moved forward. They're not evaluated systematically, typically at this stage. And what happens is that we leave the big decisions to much later stages, when typically the big engineering and, you know, financial consulting firms kick in. Now, don't get me wrong. Of course, you will ultimately make big decisions based on sound technical studies. But the early concept stage is when cities can scope out preliminary options for financing, something that would inform the next steps a lot more than it currently happens, including the identification of potential revenue sources, from the project, potential role of the private sector, if at all, the type of financing that the particular project could lead to, but also the specifications around the projects in terms of the design options, engineering specifications, technological solutions, site selections, energy sources. All of this can be done, I think, better and way cheaper at the concept stage than later on. Okay, and this has implications on the projected cost estimates for the project, particularly over their lifetime. Okay, so if you build resiliency into the project, it will increase the value of the assets you're building. And if you improve energy efficiency, it will lower operations costs. All of this leads to lower costs, better assets, and possibly more profitable projects. Again, I just need to make this perfectly clear. I'm not suggesting that you finalize the project at the early concept stage, obviously, but that the questions on the bankability of the project, on financing options, on climate smart solution be addressed in a preliminary way from the onset. And I think this is extremely powerful precisely because that's when cities have the biggest control. Cities at that level can clearly prioritize project scope out options and financing solutions without undue outside pressures. And here, making wink, wink, I suggest that there are organizations, but also consultants, but also officials within cities, perhaps, that seem to have a predetermined financing mechanism in mind. There are teams in most organizations that dedicated to the promotion of only one financing solution. So they move, like an army to promote one, and all in good faith, of course. But the point is that I think cities need to have some space where they look at the full spectrum of things and then make an informed decision on kind of where to steer the boat, and then all to be verified. Now, this, of course, requires knowledge and specific financing solutions. But at the early concept stage, we're not talking about, transaction advisory, sophisticated capacity, right? I think with just a small fraction of what cities need to invest to produce a single study for a single project, they could relatively easily train their staff to screen projects along bankability and private financing lines. And once you have that capacity, you can apply it to all projects, not single projects, and year on year, as new projects come forward. So I close here, and I think that this is one space that perhaps is underestimated. And so in answering your question, what can cities do to make projects bankable? Well, they should start early on, not underestimating what difference they can make when they look at options at the early concept stage.
Thank you very much for your ideas, and I see it very much important that if all the partners and stakeholders engage in early steps, probably they are even losing their saving of time and not losing each other's time, but even trying to find the best solution to the first moment. I would like to move to the team, Dr. Kumar and Mr. Irvine. I know that they are actually working on a project and a study. They will tell us a little bit more on responsible investments or responsible investment, why decarbonization matters in sustaining urban finance. So I'd like to ask Dr. Kumar to really present some ideas of the actual outcome of the study, and later, or they decide how to shift the time so that each of them have the 7 minutes. Mr. Irvine to really go a little bit through on the financing of the municipalities, and according to his long experience in terms of investments, what are his recommendations in this direction? The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Sunita. In fact, grateful to the team UEF4 for bringing me on board. So when I look at the whole concept here in terms of responsive investment and responsible investment, we are minded about the fact that Belfast is a post-conflict city. So when you're trying to develop something from the situation where we are now, we are looking at the context of Brexit, we are looking at the context of the Ukraine crisis, everything having direct implications on the city in the global north as well. But at the same time, when we were preparing for this, one of the perspectives that we wanted to make sure was that post COP26, the emphasis is how to decarbonize. And the UK government has moved forward quite radically in terms of looking at the measures for decarbonization, the economy as well, and to make sure that the net zero options are available to everybody. So that's the starting point. The second point, which comes in very strongly, is that when we are looking at the challenges post-pandemic, post-Brexit, etc., in terms of employability, in terms of the opportunity to expand employment, we find that the real area for cities, the urban centers, the small and medium enterprises, tends to be completely missed in the entire equation. So both Mike and we have been focusing on the ideas of the small and medium enterprises in the cities, and how can we ramp up, how can we improve their productivity, their efficiency, but at the same time also meet the net zero targets and the decarbonization targets. So investments coming into city, what are the future options for investments into the city? Which are the different portfolios available to invest in? And that's the sort of framework that we've been looking. My whole experience has been largely in the context of the university, teaching students for the last 32 years about sustainable cities and sustainable development. But now there's more of the opportunities to see how we roll out those ideas onto the actual urban spaces. So that's what we were looking at. So essentially targeting from the Glasgow Summit of 2021, COP26, looking at the 30% reduction options, but also really realizing that SMEs, there are 5.9 million SMEs in the United Kingdom. And to achieve net zero ambitions is not going to be easy unless we all take a stand together, one step at a time. So really making significant changes in the day-to-day businesses practices, and also making significant investments of time and resources at relatively short time scales is what we are looking at. So in a way, SDGs are a framework that institutional investors need to fulfill their purpose and full potentials in the capital markets and society at large, and to be accountable to the beneficiaries. So looking at the sustainable urban finance in the transitional stage in the UK, but also in the city of Belfast, we realized that the Bank of England and UK has actually mandated a task force related to understanding financial disclosures. So climate-related financial disclosures have now become mandatory since 2016, and the Bank of England is really rolling that out to make sure that every investor is able to meet those targets and to see how they are dealing with these zero carbon and decarbonization targets. So that's the second side of it. So just to give you a very quick insight, equity investments in UK SMEs increased from 245 million to 8.5 billion in 2019, just before the pandemic. So we see there was quite a quantum growth in those areas, because that's where the employability, the livelihoods are associated with. We also find that in the region of 5.4 million SMEs in the UK, together employ 24.3 million people and account for 99% of all UK businesses. This, I can roll it out across the world, and you'll find that's the same scenario wherever we look at. They represent approximately 60% of employment and roughly 50% of total private revenue and private business. So cities, most of the states have huge problems in terms of financing some of the projects, etc. And that's where the private equity capital comes really crucial to be able to provide that framework. And I think Mike will be able to say a bit more on that as we move forward. So SMEs really are growth oriented and helps to transform the character and the nature of the city over time. It improves economic productivity, economic growth, and is instrumental in driving economic growth. So how can SMEs contribute to that is really crucial, and that's what we are engaged with. But at the same time, how can we look at the environmental footprints of individual firms? And sometimes you think, oh, individual firms may not make a big impact on the environment, but if you collectively put all the SMEs together, it makes a huge impact. And we are trying to address that on a systematic basis. So just very quickly, as I said, in terms of making sure that the Bank of England's mandate is ensuring financial system is resilient to climate-related financial risks, supporting orderly economy-wide transition to net zero options. And even the university where I am, we are working on the net zero options. So everyone is engaged in that, which is far advanced among all G7 countries and G20 countries. So making almost all of them effective to climate disclosures are really crucial. So just to very quickly say that the responsible investment is a way forward from process-driven business to framing real-world impact and contribution to urban, regional, and global economy. That, for me, will be the summing up. It aligns itself to SDG policies, and it becomes much more than just an ESG mandated guidelines. And I think we have a great strength of introducing SDG within that framework more than ESG has done till now. In terms of the question that you asked me, in terms of case, we have just started this a year ago. We have some really fascinating experience coming out of one of our portfolio companies of Cordovan Further Space that looks at microtourism and SMEs and the significant progress they have made in terms of addressing issues of carbon credits, etc., and carbon auditing as well, and increasing efficiency and productivity. I'll stop there. I'll ask Mike to come in, and then I will summarize at the end.
Thank you, Satish. Thank you, everybody, and thank you for having me on this panel. As Satish has mentioned there, we are, as you know, I come from a private equity background. We've been investing in small companies now for quite some time, and we're unashamed to be investing in small companies. They are the lifeblood of every city, of every economy. You know, right across the certainly within the UK and Ireland, and of course beyond. And so it's very difficult to have a discussion around decarbonisation in cities without addressing the SME market. I know it's not exclusively what you want me to talk about, but you'll forgive me for being focused on that area. Satish mentioned there about the SDGs, and we certainly see within small companies the opportunity to use the SDGs as a framework. I mean, it's incredible when you think that in small companies, less than 20% in the UK, in the UK SME space, less than 20% have a sustainability plan and a sustainability project. So, you know, if we're able to encourage the SME population within our local economies, within our city economies, to address this very significant issue, it can have a really big impact. Large companies tend to be more focused on that, either because of internal or external motivations. And of course, large companies tend to have better access to capital. Smaller companies, it has always been the case, tend to have much more limited access to capital. And I think that's where there's a great opportunity for cities to collaborate with the private sector. And I mean, that's nothing new, of course. But I would encourage cities to look at how the population of small companies can make a really big difference. Here in the UK, for example, one of probably the single biggest issue in relation to energy is insulation of domestic and commercial residences. You know, it will not be big businesses that deliver the insulation needs of the UK. It will be small businesses. It will be businesses with 3 or 4 vans around you know, the heartland of the UK, going into residences and commercial buildings and improving the insulation. And those businesses need to be financed. You know, and there is a win-win-win in the middle of, in my view, there's a win-win-win in the middle of those types of issues. where SMEs can be not only the vessel, but also the conduit for delivery of decarbonisation, and with the support of the local municipalities or cities can support the financing of those types of project. So it works where the finance is coming through the private sector, not necessarily through the municipality, because we've talked about it here, where budgets can be highly constrained. There's not necessarily the opportunity to invest in new capital projects. And so where we are able to maybe switch capital projects to into the operating budget and use the private sector for delivery of the capital expenditure and so on, and wrap it into the operating budgets of cities or local government, I think there's a great opportunity for the private sector. I hope that makes some sense. I think as well, cities can think about this in a proactive nature. One of the questions that you asked, which I will address, I suppose, is that where do municipalities access capital and so on? Well, of course, they'll already have national and international relationships with financial institutions. And we're all aware, you can't read any of the financial press without seeing the great increase in sustainable funds, whether they're on the equity or on the debt side. There's a huge wave of capital coming into those funds, and they're looking for projects. And so I would encourage local governments and cities to be proactive in their approach, shape the projects that they're looking at, shape potentially some infrastructure investment in such a way that those particular funds will be attracted to the project. Almost be on the front foot as opposed to responding to offers from the financial institutions. And certainly that's, I think, with the great wave of funding that's going into green funds or sustainable funds, I think cities have a great opportunity around that. So look, before I hand over, I would reiterate that I think naturally we believe that small companies play a vital role. The private sector plays a vital role. And I would encourage cities and municipalities to be proactive in their approach when looking at private finance.
Thank you. Just to very quickly sort of recap and try and put that together. So increasingly, as I said, because of the targets for decarbonization, the focus for SMEs is to adopt what we call a triple transition, where we are focusing on business digitalization, adaptation of net zero practices, and productively upgrading business operations. And that's the way, how can private equity capital become a catalyst for SMEs to really transform the way they have done business and are going to do business in the future, and also change the nature and character of the city, because it will provide sustainability, livelihood to the people. I'll stop there.
Thank you very much. I see that 1 hour discussing this theme, it's kind of 5 minutes in reality, but still we'll try to squeeze and to share as much as we can. So I would like to give the floor to Dr. Gamble. He has a long experience in building not simply relationship, but working deeply with one of the most problems that the municipalities are having, which is the housing. So Dr. Gamble, what can you share with us today? Or tonight.
Thank you very much, and for giving me this opportunity to be part of this very important discussion and engagement relating to enhancing urban finance. Coming from the institution that I do work, that Shelter Africa, which is a Pan-African housing finance institution, I think it's important for us to, lay the groundwork of this, my discussion here, my presentation, in terms of understanding the extent of the challenge of housing and urban development in Africa. We've talked about, the developed world and what's happening largely in more kind of advanced economies. But of course, in the context of Africa, more specifically Sub-Saharan Africa, the challenge of housing is quite large, and we need to understand the extent of that challenge and also the role of municipalities what it's expected of them to attend to these challenges. And of course, not only municipalities, because no single institution can do it alone. It has to be collaboration with other partners. If we can go along with the data and figures that talks about the extent of demography and housing deficiency in Africa, by the year 2050, Africa is expected to pass the tipping point of 50% urban population. So, and the Africa is considered to be the most rapidly urbanizing region in the world. So what does this mean? What does this translate? It all goes to understanding that this links to a rapid need and deficit in housing. An estimated deficit now of housing will have around 60 million across Africa. So, and it's growing by the day, considering the rate of demographic growth and rural urban migration. So, and of course, linking to that, we need to really understand that housing is not only talking about SDG 11, sustainable cities and communities. We need to understand the fact that it cuts across the 17 SDGs, where also this discussion on urban finance talks into these components, because it talks about innovation, it talks about partnerships, it talks about sustainability. So if we can be able to understand this context, that goes a long way in putting our policy makers, our private sector partners, our researchers, our CSOs, to really to put in place the right measures and, you know, attend to this challenge of affordable housing. So delving into the aspect of the experience in terms of engaging municipalities to attending to this challenge of housing and built environment in general. First and foremost, one of the key issues is that of, you know, lack of capacity, which of course this has always also been mentioned by the previous speakers. But from my experience over time is that I do consider it to be a stumbling block, because you know, as far as the municipality officials do not have the requisite skills, capacities, and ability for them to explore the opportunities out there, to understand what is required of them, to raise municipality bonds, to raise green bonds, to, you know, engage with required partners that will enable them to tap into the opportunities, then we'll always keep on talking about these issues. So that's a key aspect that needs to be considered. Enhancing capacities is a way forward to attend to this challenge. And of course, collaboration. That's very, very important. Municipalities alone, they can't do it, they can't attend to this challenge. And what we need to understand is that municipalities are not working in silos. They are all part of the whole government structure. So by them collaborating, more specifically with a good communication network and engagement with the federal government, that goes a long way. Because in most instances, the funding always comes from the federal government. But if there is no close collaboration, there is no close engagement and understanding between this organ of government, then that will, of course, go a long way in not enabling enhanced collaboration between the parties. And more importantly, what needs to be understood is that our focus over time has always been on, of course, we need to go at scale. We need to develop housing units, more specifically in Africa, where we do have an estimated deficit of around 60 million housing units and growing by the day. But the focus, what we need to consider is more specifically for municipalities is that there is lack of large-scale developers across African countries. If I say large-scale developers that can deliver something like 1,000 units upwards, there are very few in sub-Saharan African countries. So what we need to understand is that as we are, of course, engaging large-scale developers to attend to this, even if the financing is made available to deliver to this unit, we need to also develop initiatives, programs that through municipalities and other organs of government to attend to small and medium-scale developers, to capacitate them, to support them, to enhance their activities, and to give them the requisite, you know, support financially, managerial-wise, and other requisite capabilities to enable them play an effective role in attending to this aspect of enhancing urban development through urban financing. And the other aspect, talking about, you know, how municipalities can have a balance in terms of right amount of supply, and also at the same time being environmentally friendly. I believe in that context, what needs to be done is first and foremost understanding that context of affordability. That's very important, because it's only through understanding affordability right from also the end user side and also the supply side. That's an important step, because the discussion always has been on, okay, what is affordable? What is affordable in Accra? Is it the same as what is affordable in Nairobi? Or what you have in Cape Town as what is affordable for a 3-bedroom unit of maybe 70 meters square? Is it the same as what is considered affordable for a housing unit of same specification in Lome or in Kampala? Definitely, the dynamics are different. The socioeconomic settings are different. So that affordability is very important. It might be affordable to a housing end user, but is it feasible to the developer? So I think with that, understanding affordability, that will go a long way, enabling municipalities and also other organs of government and also the private sector developers to play an important role in tackling the issue of housing delivery. And that also links up to what we have initiative I've done at Shelter Africa at the Center of Excellence, which is the arm that is responsible for all aspects relating to research and development, capacity building, training, and all similar initiatives to support the activities of the institution to attending challenges of affordable housing delivery. We developed a affordable calculator. What does it do? This calculator, it's a kind of innovative. So it's something new that this discussion of affordability, we try to really decouple it to understand what is affordable both on the demand and supply side. At the demand side, okay, what am I earning as a housing unit? And also, it might be affordable, the housing unit, but are we factoring in transportation costs? How much does it require a household to spend to take that individual from where the housing unit is to where the economic opportunities are, probably central business district? A housing unit might be affordable, but where it's situated, it's outside the boundaries, or let me say very far from where the CBD is. So at the end of the day, if you factor in transportation costs plus other associated costs, is not then affordable. So this tool is publicly available. I will share the link here on the comment section so that we can that discussion on affordability can really be decoupled, and that also talks to the other aspect in terms of how can we be affordable and at the same time environmentally friendly. Of course, that's very, very important. We need to go green.
Ahmed, I need to thank you, and then to ask you if you have, I don't know, just to conclude, and then I'm going to give the floor to Emmanuel.
Yes, so I will post the affordability calculator on the comment section. Great. And we're looking forward to really, this interesting discourse to continue going forward. Thank you for giving me the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I see this is very much, I don't know, even difficult for me really to keep the timing, but we need to. So Manuel, you are working a lot into the one completely different theme, which is the informal settlements and the financing way or the economic impact of the reallocation or the rehousing. What can you share with us tonight?
Thank you very much for inviting me. Like you have seen, we are working with the city of Kigali. Actually, we are a SCAT company. Then we are working with the city of Kigali to transform the formal settlements. So we have a case study where we are implementing 4 hectares to see how we can do the rehousing projects. In Kigali, they have tried different ways of dealing with these informal settlements by relocating the population to go to elsewhere, but that policy actually failed. So what we are trying with the SCAT support, technical support, with the city of Kigali is to rehouse the population in the same area. So one challenge we are meeting now is how the city of Kigali will be able to finance the entire process. So technically, still SCAT is supporting them, but financially, it is the public funds that is being used. Now, the issue is how the city of Kigali, for instance, will mobilize $9 million just to transform 4 hectares of informal settlements. That is the question. So if you look at the situation for the moment, from the social perspective of people living there. Most of them, they are happy to stay in the informal sector. They said we don't have any problem. We are closer to the city center where I can do our business there. But still, they have problem. They will remain in poverty because they can't access the mortgage or financial products to be developed for them. So that way, actually, they encouraging them. So, but we said, let us work with the community. What SCAT is providing the support is to engage the community. The community has to be at the basis of the planning process. So we plan with them, we do some sessions with them. We decide even on the housing typologies. So they have to be part of the process in order to accept the rehousing process. So the city of Kigali actually did a wonderful work. They did what's called the master plan. So from the master plan, they did a campaign to the entire city of Kigali. So the people are aware that that part of the former settlements have to be transformed in one way or another. So from that perspective, everyone is aware. The good thing is that the population of the community actually is engaged and has much confidence with the city of Kigali because there is a system whereas they have the land type every time they do transformation, they know that they will get the land titles. That will allow them to access to the mortgage. Even if you want to sell your assets, it will be very easy. So that way helps them to understand the process and helps them to engage. So the best way or the positive things, you have to engage the community. Otherwise, you may find it difficult to convince them how they can, relocate to those areas to be transformed. So now the big challenge now, how the city is going to finance those processes. So the city of Kigali with its SCAT, they are now developing a model, a financial model, where the private investment may come in to do this kind of transformation. For your information, the city of Kigali is 65% informal sector. So more than 2,000 hectares have to be transformed with this policy. So how the private sector can be engaged? This is a huge task. So there is a financial model which is being developed and which is being sold to the private investors. Whereas it will be like a PPP model where the government will provide basic infrastructure and the private sector can come in, develop the site, rehouse the with the land for which they can develop and sell to the private people. The good thing is that all the former settlements are located at the heart of the capital. It is an attractive area where even the financial institutions can be very happy to partner, especially to develop financial products, for them to provide the mortgage to people who want to buy those lands. So that is the project we are working on it, but the best challenge is still where to get those. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much for sharing. It looks like, I don't know, the partnership first, engagement in the early stages second, leaving a little bit much more autonomy even to the municipality because they know their needs and they know what the municipality and people of the municipality needs, engagement of private and public partnership. And especially I like very much the approach of engaging the SME. If a state cannot do anything, everything, the local government cannot do everything, then probably a lot of SME can do something very small, but they are too big and in a big scale, they can have even a big impact. I don't know if we have any questions in the last 3 minutes that we are remaining in this session. And if not, then whom else from our panel would like to make any kind of 1 minute of or 2 minutes of brief? I would be very, very happy to give the floor to you. Dr. Ayman, yes, we have a guest in the panel. Would you like to make a questions or any comments? We cannot hear you. Still, we cannot hear you. Can you try it?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, now, yes.
Okay, so thank you so much. I don't know if there is time, but I have been involved with a project that is combined post-presentation, project by Shelter Africa that they did in Uganda, and that's the focus of my PhD study actually, and it's also upgrading of informal settlements. But how can you, as a city, you have the right to protect the informal settlers against gentrification? Because when you get the private sector and you say that these are prime lands, eventually it's gonna, you know, when you develop it, it's going to hike the price of the land, and then end of the day, people will just like sell it out and go and sprawl somewhere else, which lead to urban sprawl. So you need to make sure that these financial models are actually sensitive and affordable to the people, and without disconnecting the social cohesion of the people. So they don't want to leave because they don't want to lose out the social cohesion, which is performed like a security system for them. And I would like to shed the gender lens here, especially for women who develop, rely on each other to support each other and establish their home-based enterprise and businesses. So they don't want to go there. So it looks too good to be true, involving the private sector and thinking that's not going to have like another social impact and gentrification impact. Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor. I don't know if any of the panelists would like to make any comment after the comments of Dr. Ayman, even though I think we are in the limits of our panel. But her comments, yeah, it's always this kind of this balance, what is good and what is bad. But always when you talk, when you collaborate, when you have this partnership and then take in consideration all the needs, then the best approach is to find the best solution for all the parties involved. And yeah, this is a difficult task, I think. It's not kind of we're not able to give a formula and one formula fits to all. It's always, and especially when we are talking to the municipalities, which becomes very much difficult, because going down in the bigger cities or even smaller cities, they have different needs and different specifics. So it's important to understand their needs and then to adapt and to change even the models to be fitted in specific countries or specific municipalities as well. So thank you, everybody. I wish we have much more time to really discuss, but hopefully, I don't know, the Economic Urban Forum will have another, not the next year, but maybe the next couple of months or so on, kind of a follow-up, and so we can really come together and then really see the best practices and share our experience, not for the sake of sharing, but for the sake of bringing the best models and try to multiply them. So thank you everybody, and hope to meet or to see or to cooperate with you in the near future. Thank you very much. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.